Oops, we're already live. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. This is my friend Annie Laurie, and she's very special to me. Today, as we are the Creators 2030, together with Com 26B, the three Peacemakers, Sherry Mespin, and David, we today are really having a conversation about the state of women, the direction women are going in. We're going to go the gamut from gender equality to, I mean, everything you could name. And so I wanted to have a conversation with Annie Laurie because she is, for me, she's a healer. She can tell you the other things that she does, but for me, she's a healer of the planet. And I don't say that lightly. She is really a healer, and she is mindful of her energy, mindful of her boundaries, and she teaches people overall. And it's something that I truly appreciate in her. Um, so Annie, would you share, what you do, and then we'll get right into the conversation. If that's okay.
What I do, so I studied different things. So I studied Western medicine, I studied Chinese medicine, and I'm from an indigenous background. I'm Polynesian, which means that I have an understanding of health that goes beyond the physical. Sun Simya, which is one of the founders of traditional Chinese medicine, said that the root of all disease is in the spirit. So this is where I start with people, with the spirits, and then which means a lot of things you may have had from your ancestors, from your own lineage, from maybe soul contracts, um, karmic stories, entanglement, trauma. And then we move to the physical, to this life, to traumas in this life, to what happened when you were in your mother's womb, what happened through your birth, what happened in this life, the belief system, the web that's been around you all your life. And so to see that health is something quite complex, and it encapsulates a web of so many things that are physical, emotional, and spiritual. This is, in a nutshell, what I do.
You know, we talk about mental health of women. On one, women as a woman, was thinking about this the other day. We're very complicated as women because we're mothers, we're nurturers. Without us, you cannot nurture the planet, really. And but on the other hand, we have mental health challenges. And I was thinking about this last night. As much as we talk about what's been going on, I'm involved in an intimate partner violence conference this week, later on this week. And, we hear about sexual assault and things like that. But we never talk about women's partnership, real women's partnership. Because, I heard a woman say this before, and I wholeheartedly agree. Women either do one of three things with each other. They really are friends and connected professionally with each other and hold each other up. Or a woman will sometimes hold another woman up unless she gets to the same level she is and then intimidate it. Or we'll deal with each other in a way that we'll listen to what you have and then we'll go for it and usurp your intellectual property on a personal or professional level. Or number four, you have women who are just vampires. And people can say that this relates to human beings in general, yes, but we as women do this with each other. And it follows the gamut. And I just want to know your thoughts on that. We want to learn today. I'm open to just being a learning vessel today. So I would love you to know your thoughts on that.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a big topic. So you have to realize that what is outside, what is reflected back to you, is simply a mirror of the relationship with yourself. So if you're not holding yourself, if you're not acknowledging your own power, if you're not comfortable with having abundance, if you're not comfortable with all that you are, if you haven't looked deep within from your childhood all the belief system that went around success, went around being supported, then this is what the reality that is going to be mirrored to back to you is going to show. So if other women are not welcoming you, which part of yourself is not welcoming yourself, you know? I would always bring it back to the relationship to the self. So the more I support myself, the more I am present with the repressed and suppressed. These are different. Repressed and suppressed are conscious and unconscious. And the more I'm present with the emotions that I'm not willing to see or I have suppressed, the more they can be transformed. So if I'm suppressing a part of me that is not that was not supported, that was put down, that was victimized, if I'm not prepared to see that aspect of myself, this is what's going to come up in my movie. This is how the outside world is going to treat me. So the solution is always about presence. I am present with what is. I am present with the emotions I, at some point, did not have the tools to deal with, especially as a child, as a teenager. And because I didn't have the tools, and no one can, as 5-year-old, a newborn, a teenager does not have the tools, and many parents cannot support that. So it's okay and it's normal. But as adults or young adults or elderly, we have now the tools and the power to sit still and to create space and to be present with whatever is still sitting with us from whatever time in our life. And as we see it, it changes, it morphs, it opens, and then it creates a different type of possibilities with the outside world and with sisterhood, with support, with colleagues, with intimate relationships.
That's very powerful. Okay. That's very powerful. And that's where I wanted to go. I knew that that's where you would take it. Um, you know, I believe that you mirror who you are from the inside out. I believe those places where we as women are not willing to look inside, we can become toxic to ourselves and toxic to other people. And when we lack recognition to ourselves of what really, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. There's something that came up in my life, but I see it in the sessions with people, and it's not a personal issue. I'd say it's a collective issue, and it's a collective issue that's been created through thousands of years of history with women, and I would call it the victim archetype. And a lot of women, for whatever reason, we women, because I'm part of it and I've been a victim of that also, is that we often end up in the mother archetype. And the mother, what does a mother do? She sacrifices herself, she does everything, she cooks and she gives and she gives. But that's when you have actual real children for a certain of time. Then the children grow up, and then we need to remove ourselves and no longer do that and let them, take control about their lives. But the problem is that we often do that with our colleagues, with our work, with our partners. And this is when a lot of problems start. If we do that with our partner, then you're in a mother-child relationship. How is even intimacy possible within that context? If you do that with work, you're going to end up doing everything, not getting recognition, getting frustrated. I do everything. Same with relationship. I do everything and he's never there. So there is something that we have inherited from a long history of women that I think it's really time now, because we have the tool, we have access, we have sisterhood, we can talk, we can discuss. It's time to name it, and it's time for us to acknowledge what we are carrying and to move past that. It's very important, I think, to start working on that on a global scale, that we're not victims and we don't have to do everything, and we can remain the daughter of our parents, the partner of our partners, the mother of our children, but not end up being a mother of everybody and everything.
You know, it starts with what our girls and our sons see, okay? What they see of the mother, because they often see the mother sacrificing. Even
Mm-hmm.
if she is in a marriage where there's equality, the woman still sacrifices. And I think that there's a reason for that. We're the nurturers.
Mm-hmm.
We're the nucleus of the family. And one of the things I think is important is that women remember to recharge themselves.
Yes,
To
very
take
important.
exactly, and then take the time, whether you meditate, whether you pray, take the time to journal.
Mm-hmm.
Some women don't even know how to do that. I heard someone say something. How can you expect someone to do something if they don't even know they have access to it?
Mm. And we can go beyond. Is if we as women, but also men, if we don't learn to regenerate ourselves, how can we approach the planet and the resources of the planet in a regenerative way? So there's been this narrative for now centuries of this kind of dominant male energy, and this is not pejorative. It's male energy means active, means young, means doing. Yin energy, female energy means regeneration. And the more we start being yin with ourselves, regenerating, the more we learn to recuperate, to do nothing, to be still, men and women. The more we learn to do that, the more we're going to be able to do that with the outside world too, and come up with solutions with the environment, with our planet, that are sustainable. But it starts with ourselves.
That's the thing. It starts with us.
Mm.
But if we take it to another level, okay, to the woman who's unconscious, because she's living in an in an area where she's got to take care of the family. Maybe
Mm.
there's a husband, maybe there's not a husband, and even if he's great and he's working together, she's got to deal with every aspect of that home. Let's look at COVID-19. The woman is at home, she's working from home. They're saying now in Europe and Americas that women are now having to come home, okay? Which is taking away all of the hard work they did to get to where they wanted in the workplace. Balancing that feminine and masculine energies within themselves, because when you do too much, you build up more masculine hormone.
Mm.
You don't take care of yourself. And I think that's even for anybody, whether it's male or female. But for women, we feel at a deeper level on certain levels. And I'm not saying men don't either, but we feel we have 80% oxytocin in our system, which gives us that hormone for nurturing and loving.
Mm-hmm.
When we go back to the work and the home, when we don't feel empowered within ourselves at home and don't even know how to do that because maybe it wasn't taught to us. Now we have a child that we're teaching the same thing. Where do
Mm.
we start, Annie, if we don't even know to do that? If we don't even know that it wasn't even in our DNA to look, and if it's not in your DNA, you can't attract what you don't know that exists.
Yeah, that's a great question, Gail. First of all, it's usually, and that's a shame, it usually starts with a crisis. You know, you're so unhappy and you build up so much anger and resentment that you start looking for answers. And the first step would be to look at the patterns and look at maybe the patterns of your parents, of your mother, of your dad, and look what you've taken on from your childhood. Deal with and acknowledge, oh, mom, I'm like you. Or dad, I'm like you. And acknowledge in which way you are like your parents, which way you are like your mother, or which way you've built yourself in complete opposition of it. So it starts with acknowledging what is, acknowledging what what construction you grew up in, the belief system you grew up in, the belief system around being a woman, around success, around motherhood, some cultures, women grow up to believe you can't be a mother and be successful. So it's really about journaling and becoming aware of the construction that is sitting with you in this moment, without judgment, without guilt. It's about saying, okay, this is where I am now, and reaching a point of acceptance, and being still with maybe what happened as a child, the frustration of your mother, or the victim or the sacrifice of your mother, and saying, okay, Mom, I respect you, I love you, I see what you have carried, I see the sacrifice you've made, I see how you felt stuck, I see how you felt frustrated, and please watch me with love as I no longer carry that for you, as I make space for new possibilities for myself, as I stretch beyond the known and create a life where I can do these things differently. So these are little tips, on how to start.
That's just where it starts. How about when we are relating unconsciously at our workplace every day as women? The insecurities come up. We don't want to see that one get to this one. Especially, I'm noticing this between young women and older, okay? We're telling the youth that they're the future, they're the future. So we have young women trying to outdo the older women, okay, because they want to be older. And older women, which I want to say this to young women, they don't understand, is that we're taking care of your college educations. We're taking care together, if we have a partner, the things that you need if you're in college and, going through high school and whatever. And when you come out of college, we may be supporting you. That's why and if you're looking at an older woman at the job and you're like, I'm going to get her job or something like that, I just want you to remember she's got a family she's taking care of. And you're just starting on your journey as into this, because I hear this with a lot of younger women about older women. Oh, she's slow. She doesn't know. Just realize that she's taking care of a family. You're starting out. I understand you have your student debt, but for some reason, sometimes today's millennial women, it's a self, what is it, and self entitlement. Please understand that you will be at that stage. You could, if you're 25, you might be at that stage anywhere between 25 and 35 of having a child. Just remember, you could be right there with them. And at that point, you'd have your college debt, you're with your partner, and you're taking care of a child or children. So I think as women, we need to really come together and recognize that we're going to go through life's what is normal of, I shouldn't say normal, but what we all do is, we go to college, we get a great job usually, we have children or we don't have children, or we have nieces or nephews, and then we get married. This is just, or boyfriends, whatever, girlfriends, whatever you want to call it. That's our journey in life usually, okay? And to remember that when we are all working together in an office environment or an entrepreneurial situation, that we are actually engaging with others. You know what I mean? It's not like we're by ourselves. And so to realize you don't know what that woman at your job is dealing with. You don't, you don't know. For instance, you own a business and a young woman comes in, I can do that. I can do, no, you can't. You haven't studied the 7 years of Chinese herbology that Annie has studied. You haven't gone through and gotten not only the college education that Annie has, but had the experience in engaging with people around them. There is a respect and there's a wisdom that comes with time. Whether we like it or not, you can't get it overnight. And I think sometimes today, older and young, it doesn't matter the age, they want to get it overnight. They want it right away. And what precipitates, I want it right away, is not the confidence within oneself that they will have it anyway at some point, what's meant for them. And this is what precipitates. I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, that's a very interesting topic. I'd like to approach it differently. I'd like to approach it that it is it is the the Western mentality, it is a collective system that leads to that, and it's a system of competition, of hierarchy, or a system of people are serving the self as opposed to serving a purpose-driven company. It's the school system that rewards blame and shame. We are raised with the idea of blame and shame. You succeed, you got rewards. You don't, you're shamed, and it's the whole system that creates that. In a lot of indigenous ways of thinking, where the we predominates, which has been translated since the 70s into teal organization, sociocracy, holacracy, collective management, where people join a company that is purpose-driven, and everybody serves organically the purpose, and there's no longer that type of competition. And I think that's the solution. It's more the system. Because the kids are educated in this way. We have now evolved with a system that only fosters that. How can you then tell a child who since a very young age has been taught that to think and behave and like that, to certainly not behave like that? So I think there's a much deeper conversation we need to have about how we want to structure organized society, and how we should create collective solution where everybody has its place, where the elderly are seen as elders, not put away in a old people's home, where the young people are in contact of the elderly, feel blessed to receive the knowledge that they have harnessed. And so I would be an advocate for a much wider conversation about society there, because I don't think you can tackle the issues you mentioned just by addressing on the individual level. It won't work, because it's almost like the white man's disease. And when I say white, I don't say the white as a white color. It's just whatever system has derived of the colonialism, all the last century's history of that for me came from fear of not having enough, of scarcity, which is what led us to colonize, to have slaves, to go and take resources from other countries, to create wars. So it's that disease that we have to tackle on a much deeper level.
But the question, where do we start? Even though it's something that we must tackle on a different level, we do have to bring it to the individual level here so that people can pull it to them. You see, when you're dealing with something, it's just my perspective that you have to pull something to you. If you really want to get out, like you said, unfortunately, it starts with a crisis how we learn. No matter how much you know, sometimes we don't apply it until there is a crisis. I've started learning to not apply something when there's a crisis, but learn
I
to
think it
kind of
starts.
ascertain it. Just kind
I
of,
think it starts by transitioning within from an I perspective to a we perspective, which is like the concept of Ubuntu. I am because we are. And as we embrace that stillness and realize we are all part of a whole, we can have an influence as entrepreneurs, as decision makers, as politicians, as mothers, as mayors of cities. We can start creating a collective kind of structures, even if it's a prototype level, where everybody has the same worth, and where people work to create solutions on a small scale in our village, in our communities, in our countries. And a lot of solutions have been already put in place, and many companies are already working on that collective model, like Patagonia, or for anyone interested in topic, there's holacracy, sociocracy. And as we start creating on the small scales regenerative solutions and collective management solutions, which is very different than communism, it's very different. we start seeing the value of each individual within the whole, and each of them having a voice.
I love it. I love that. And I guess we're saying the same thing in a different way. I'm saying that when you see this kind of conversation, it then becomes an individual journey that then fits
Mm.
within the collective journey. I go back to what those women said. I find it very powerful, and I have to agree with what she said. I was sitting there in that conference several years ago saying to myself, this is the way we treat each other as women. We talk about, oh, women's empowerment, gender equality, we're helping the girls and whatever. Yet we'll look across at a woman who we feel that doesn't have the capacity that we have or not in that place at the time, and we won't lend a hand out to support her. I am not talking about supporting her financially, because we may be dealing with our own financial stuff. But when you empower somebody, that's why they say when you empower a woman, you empower a community. Okay. But most of us women will look, I'm just going to get real straight here. From the indigenous side, which you are indigenous as well, and to the African American, to the Hispanic, to the Asian, to the Caucasian, to the Muslim woman, to the Black woman. I mean, all of them, we'll look at each other in a certain way, even subconsciously, our own inner prejudices. Okay. If we are not conscious as a human, like human beings in general, but also as women to our prejudices, we can hurt each other even more. Okay? Men kind of get it. They will support each other even if they don't agree with each other to get a job, to get us something. They will compete like crazy. But once the other person wins, like I hate to use Trump and Biden, but Trump is fighting, not conceding, okay? But once he does concede, most men get he's in there. They'll walk away. Like they'll fight all the way through. But a woman will hold a grudge in a different way because we think differently. We multitask differently. We're nurturers differently. I would like to see us educate ourselves where we honor each other, even if that person doesn't have the capacity that we may have in that moment. A kind word, an empowering word. Not like, oh my God, look at her. How can she do that? And we'll tell our friend that.
Well, we can only honor other people if we are honoring ourselves. So in the end, the encouragement is always it's always about self-love. It's always about self-respect. It's always, people will only be triggered by other people's behavior if they haven't gone through all those layers within themselves. And I think there's beauty in everybody, but I can see that because I see the beauty within myself, you know.
And I think that's why I'm so passionate as well, because I can often see the beauty in others myself.
Mm.
But here's something interesting. Let's go a little deeper before you this last thing, Annie, before you go. We can see the beauty in others many times and be giving our power over to others, not power over someone. And I want people to understand power is the ability to influence. Power is the ability to use your wisdom wisely. It is not to lord it over someone. That is not power. And what I want to say to you is we can see the beauty in others and be all out there giving to others and not be seeing the beauty in ourselves. This is what we do as women on a regular basis. We give to everyone else, nurture everyone else. So I have a little bit of that's my challenge to you, Miss Annie. We give to others and sometimes don't even and give beautifully to others and love others, but don't even know how to take that nourishment and give it to ourselves. What are your thoughts on that?
There you're describing again the mother archetype, you know. And I think there's different approach to this. There is the approach of maybe more the Kaplan triangle, so the drama triangle. So as I haven't acknowledged the victim within myself, I project that on other situations outside of myself, and I see people that have issues that I haven't dealt with myself, and I just go and look after them, as opposed to acknowledging what's going on within me. And then usually if that's the case, usually the person that you are going to go to rescue would sometimes end up resenting you as being its own persecutor. For anyone wanting to know more about this, it's called the Kaplan Triangle, which is a psychological model of how a rescuer will rescue a victim, and the victim will perceive that person as a persecutor. And again, this is due to this long lineage of women. If we think about our mothers, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, I mean, life was never that easy. Human history has been harsh on women, and often it's acknowledging that part within us that is suffering, or that is carrying the suffering of mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers. As we acknowledge that part within us, we no longer need to rescue others. We can move to being a coach or a challenger, which is very different. The rescuer is just going to take the weight for other people and carry for other people. But we women have to progress to a role of challenger, of nurturer, of witness, of being present. But we have to learn to no longer carry for others.
That is the most powerful thing I've heard in that way in a long time. My mother used to tell me, and I always reference my mom in a lot of ways because she was a woman who gave her life to other people. And I remember at the end, towards the end before she passed away, she said, I wish I had listened to myself.
Mm.
She said, I didn't know. She said, I was taught to take care of other people and to give, but I never knew how to love and give to myself.
Mm.
My grandmother, who used to dress beautifully and, was a Southern belle, as we say, in the southern parts of the States, same thing. She would give. She was a fighter. She was tough. The strong woman in, I guess, the 30s and 40s, way before I was born, in 50s and 60s. But one of the things about her, again, is she took care of the family. But you would never think that. You thought she loved herself, whatever. I would say she loved herself in many ways, okay? But at the end, again, there are certain things that she went through that didn't have to be that. And I think that the most important too is, like you said, we don't have to carry that. There's a generational pull that we have where it goes generation to generation, where you can, and this is going to go a little spiritual for some people, you can say to, when you meditate or you pray or whatever you do, that I release the generational bonds that have held me captive to that way of being. And now I'm becoming the new me that I am. And this is not some mantra or affirmation, but you begin to release that pull from you. What are your thoughts on that? Let's go there a little bit on the spiritual side.
What you're describing is the story of my mother, it's the story of my grandmother, both my grandmothers, it's the stories of their mothers. And I think that's a universal story. And it comes from different roots. The Judeo-Christian is one of them. This notion of sacrifice that is very ingrained in our psyche, in the narrative, in our stories. And I think we need to evolve from that to maybe creating win-win situations, and acknowledging that part that we are carrying. I don't need to sacrifice to be happy. It doesn't need to be hard for me to be successful. I don't need to kill myself to start a business. I don't need to go through so much pain to make life changes. And that's something that is very ingrained in our psyche. You got to think that not so long ago, how much effort it was just to grow potatoes, and how many people had to leave their land because the land was not giving. Suddenly there was bacteria, all kinds of things. The crops didn't come, there were famines. And then people went to America. My ancestors from Spain went to North Africa, to Algeria, where they were given land and they were cultivating land. And it was at the time a French colony. So this is a story that is very deep, running through all of us, that it has to be hard. And I suggest that we acknowledge, yes, my ancestors went through all this, but right now, I choose that I don't need to carry that. I can actually be successful, happy, have a balanced relationship, have success in all my endeavors without hurting, without sacrificing my health, without going through a burnout. So it's acknowledgement, and then it's making space for something new.
I had to take a minute to take that in. I had to take a minute to take, because when you said that we don't have to hurt to make a change, we don't have to take ourselves through hell and back, excuse my expression, but to open or start a business. We don't know, and that goes across whether you're male, female, LGBTQIA, it doesn't matter what you are. That really does affect people. I mean, at the highest level, okay? At the highest level. So got it. I so got it. That is, wow. And here's something I wanted to share. There are some studies that the home labor in the pandemic times deepen the inequality between women and men. Not only the woman have to take care of their home. In some places like my country, the woman is who takes in consideration what the kid have to do for the virtual classes. Anything you want to say about that?
Well, this is the reality, and it pains me. And there's a lot of cultural, a lot of factors playing in, but yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth that many men, many partnerships are still built this way. Now, as a woman, if you are in that situation, please talk about it. Please don't repress your frustration. Please don't think that you have to do it all on your own. Try to stretch beyond what you know, and make room for other options. Maybe the grandparents, maybe the neighbors, maybe make space for your partner to chip in a bit more. Maybe, I know every story is going to be different, and not every story is going to have an easy solution. But sometimes when you feel stuck, the way I resolve when I feel stuck, whether or not you believe in God, whether or not you're spiritual, whether or not, but I tend to surrender the possibilities. I said, I don't know how to improve my situation right now, because my mind is programmed to see only certain outcomes and possibilities. So I don't know how, but I trust that that it's going to improve, that a solution is going to come, and I make room for it. So it's about not getting stuck in that same corner over again, but creating the possibility of an improvement within your mind already. And maybe suddenly your partner chips in more, because maybe you've been doing everything, so he's not used to even having the space to help. He assumes that you're going to do it, but there might be a possibility that he might help you more. And I think most men would want to help more. My assumption is men are good. My assumption is most men want to be good fathers, want to be good partners. Maybe some situations they're not, but most of them do. And so let's us women create the space for them to be the best fathers they can by giving them the space to also help. Yeah.
This is a very powerful thing you just hit on, and I know we only have 4 minutes left. I want to end on this one. We train the people around us how to treat us.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we are conscious or not conscious of that, we train them how to treat us. Okay? So, with that said, yes, we train them how to treat us. Big time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, what happens, Annie, your thoughts on this? What happens if you've trained your partner not to help you? They're so used to you doing everything, and now you're like, no more of this. You've been with them for years. They're not going to just change on a dime. That's where it can be painful with the arguments and other things that come up. Because if you're like, well, we have a child and, we're going to do this 100, or we have food, and you just say, some people like to train, well, I won't take, you have to take care of the child. You can't just go, I'm not going to change a diaper. You know what I mean? Because then the child becomes the pawn in your new growth. So, any thoughts about that?
That's a complicated one because we're talking about so many different cultures and scenarios. In some cultures, the woman would have a network with the communities, with their families, and some communities they would be very alone. It's not always the same, but what I would say in general is to start by being open to receiving. And that's a deep one because that's something that's been forged through your childhood, through the model you had. But I receive love and support. It starts with a mantra that says something like that. I receive love and support from the people in my life. I open myself to receiving love and support from all the people in my life, from my partners, from my family. And you repeat that every day. You write it on your fridge and you open yourself to receiving. There's something strong within us women is that we give, but there's no space for us to receive. So it starts by creating that space. And those of you who want to try that, I'm sure you're going to have amazing experiences with this because suddenly there is the possibility. And you may see your partner saying, hey, tonight come home, I'm going to cook. I'm going to do the bedtime story in the bath and you relax. And maybe all along he wanted to do that.
I thank you. I really thank you for taking this time out. Annie, any last words for mental health issues that people face, especially women in this COVID time? Intimate partner violence, dealing with, dealing with your children or whatever. I think everything is a direct reflection of where we are. I think COVID has taught us that we have to deal with ourselves now. And as a woman, you have no choice but to deal with yourself, or you will be a very miserable person. Someone said to me, I think you know Venu from India. He said, like a lotus, when you learn a lesson, don't let it take too long before you apply what you learned from that lesson, or you'll be one miserable person.
That's
So,
fine.
any last?
About mental health, well, there's different ways we can look at it. First of all, self-love. So the more you love yourself, the more you can to have that in your life. Now, with domestic abuse, please talk about it. Every situation is different, but talk about it. Tell the people around you what's going on. You don't have to be in that situation. And but that's one particular case where where that is very tragic, and I can only find a solution when you start talking about it. But about mental health in general, I'm going to leave you with a different thought, a different concept. And that concept is, you got to imagine that there is a circle that is just you, and then there's another circle, another circle. And you can draw them. You can draw like up to 6 or 7. And most of the time, men, but more women, the woman that is going to go and help others, the helper type of person. How much is stored just on the intimate level, so the second circle. And often women in that intimate circle have the job, have the kids, have their parents, have their partners, and it's too much. So all this leads to feeling overwhelmed. So an exercise I give to a lot of my clients is to draw the circles and to acknowledge, oh, wow, everything is coming too close to my heart. Like I pile everything on an energetic level way too close. And so as soon as the stress at work, then you start having the headaches, then you start having, the sleepless nights, and then you're really affected by everything. So it's about pushing away energetically, one by one, and close in that second circle. First one is just you. Second one, if your relationship is healthy, this should be only your partner. Then maybe your children, maybe your family, then your friends, and maybe your job. But if everything is so close in your intimate sphere, this is where the mental health issues really happen. It's just too much.
On that note, my dear, I thank you. I thank you so much for your time, as always, and for giving your time. One of the things I do want to mention, Annie gives a lot of her time. And I want to talk about one thing before we go. Pay people for their time. And if you cannot pay them for their time, offer a stipend, offer an honorarium. Be respectful. Annie has taught me so much in that arena. And by the way, she honors herself. And so I think that when we have women that are our friends, Annie is my friend, but she's also a teacher. I'm a teacher in another way. So I honor her in that area. But the biggest thing she's taught from what she learned herself is be paid for your value that you bring. You're not being paid as a servant, but being paid for the talent or task you bring. Because that, again, I want to say, has to honor the woman in taking care of her household. Whether she has a husband that makes $100 million has nothing to do with it. Even look at how I'm speaking right now. That's a societal ingrained thing, what I just said. Partners are equal in what they bring to the table. They just may do it a little different. I also want to say that male and female are very different. You cannot expect a man to act like a woman or a woman to act like a man. And this is something I want to say to young women. They're very different. So with that said, I thank you so much, Annie, for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay. Would you just hold on in the green room as we just drop you off for a